Picture a human from 1,000 years in the future. Go on, actually picture them. If you're like most people, you probably just imagine some version of the classic sci-fi alien. Giant bald head to hold a giant brain, huge black eyes, a thin, weak little body because robots do everything now. That's the future human we've all been sold in movies for decades, and it's almost certainly wrong. Every part of it. But here's what's actually strange. If you could stand your great-great-great-grandchild from the year 3000 in front of you right now, the real one, you might not be able to tell how they were changed just by looking. Because the biggest change coming for our species in the next 1,000 years isn't happening to our faces or our skulls or our height. It's happening to who's holding the pen. For 4 billion years, one force decided what every living thing became: blind, slow, patient nature. And in the last few years, quietly, in a handful of labs, we took that pen out of nature's hand. For the first time in the history of life on Earth, a species started designing itself. And it's not a prediction. It already happened. But let's back up, because there's a myth I need to kill first. A lot of people think human evolution just stopped, that once we had heating and medicine and grocery stores, we escaped natural selection and froze in place. It feels true. It's completely false. Evolution never stopped. It's happening in your body's blueprint right now, and some of the evidence is genuinely weird. Take the artery in your forearm. When you were a fetus, you had an extra one called the median artery, and normally it disappears before you're born. But it's not disappearing like it used to. Among people born in the 1880s, about 10% kept that artery into adulthood. Among people born in the late 20th century, around 30%. That's the number tripling in about 100 years. We are measurably growing an extra blood vessel right now as a species in real time. Then there's your wisdom teeth. More and more people are simply being born without them. Worldwide, roughly 1 in 5 people is missing at least one, and in some populations it's closer to a third. Our jaws are shrinking, our diets got soft, and evolution is quietly deleting teeth we no longer need. And it's not just the obvious stuff. Your ability to digest milk as an adult? That's a mutation that spread in the last several thousand years, and it's still spreading, even within the last 1,000. Every single one of us is born with around 175 brand new genetic mutations our parents didn't have. We are not a finished product. We never were. So evolution is absolutely still running, which makes the 1,000-year question sound easy, right? Just fast forward the tape. More missing wisdom teeth, more forearm arteries, and boom, future human. Except that's where this whole thing falls apart. And it's where it gets interesting. Here's what nobody tells you when they show you those dramatic future human pictures. 1,000 years is nothing. I mean it. On an evolutionary scale, 1,000 years is a blink. Natural selection is agonizingly slow. For a new trait to take over a population, it usually needs many, many generations. The useful mutation has to appear and then slowly, over thousands of years, out-reproduce everything else until it becomes common enough to even notice. The milk thing took thousands of years to spread, and it's still not everywhere. So if you let pure nature run the clock for 1,000 years, your descendant would look basically like you. Maybe a few more of them are missing wisdom teeth. Maybe their immune systems have shifted a little to handle modern diseases. Small stuff. Definitely not a bug-eyed alien. Honestly, kind of a boring answer if nature were still the only thing steering, but it isn't. Not anymore. And this is the exact moment the story stops being about biology textbooks and starts being about something we did on purpose that genuinely changed the rules for every human being who will ever be born after us. In 2018, a scientist in China named He Jiankui stood up and told the world he had done something no one had ever done before. He had made genetically edited human babies. Real ones. Born alive. Using a gene editing tool called CRISPR. Think of it as a find and replace for DNA. He'd edited human embryos and then implanted them. Twin girls were born. He gave them the aliases Lulu and Nana. A third edited baby followed in 2019. His goal was to disable a gene called CCR5 to try to make the children resistant to HIV. And the world did not celebrate. It recoiled because he had crossed the single brightest line in all of biology. Here's why it matters so much. And you need this one detail. There are two kinds of gene editing. One only changes you, your body, your cells, and it dies with you. But he didn't do that kind. He edited the embryos, the germ line, which means the changes he made are heritable. They can be passed down. Lulu and Nana could have children, and those children could carry the edit and their children after them. Sit with what that actually means. For 4 billion years, the only way to change what gets passed to the next generation was to survive, reproduce, and let nature slowly sort it out over thousands of years. He Jiankui did it in an afternoon. He reached directly into the blueprint of the human species and rewrote a line of it. A line that could now flow down the generations forever. One person, one lab, one edit that nature never approved and never will. And I have to be honest with you, because this is the part the flashy headlines skipped. It was messy. The tool didn't work cleanly. It edited the two twins differently. Not all of their cells even got the change. They came out as genetic patchworks. We still don't fully know what else those edits might do to them, and that uncertainty is a big reason the entire scientific world condemned it, and he went to prison. But you cannot unknow how to do this. The door is open now. The tool exists, it gets better every year, and somewhere out there are 3 children walking around with DNA a human being chose for them. That is not science fiction. That happened. The pen is in our hand, and the 1,000-year question just changed completely. It's no longer, what will nature slowly do to us? It's, what will we decide to become? There's one more wild card, and it points our 1,000-year future somewhere nature never could. Off this planet entirely. Here's a real experiment. NASA took 2 identical twins, astronauts Scott and Mark Kelly. Same DNA, same lives. Then they sent Scott to live in space for almost a year while Mark stayed home as a perfect genetic control. And when Scott came back, the twins were not quite identical anymore. Now, I want to be careful here because this got wildly exaggerated in the press, and we're not doing that. Scott's actual DNA code did not fundamentally mutate. What changed was his gene expression, which genes were switched on and off. Most of it snapped back to normal within months of landing, but not all of it. Around 7% of those changes were still hanging on, in genes tied to his immune system, DNA repair, bone formation. And weirdly, the little caps on the ends of his chromosomes, the ones that normally shrink as you age, actually got longer in space, then shrank back within 2 days of landing. So no, 1 year in orbit doesn't rewrite you. But here's the thought that gets me. That was one person for 1 year in low orbit, still basically next door to Earth. Now imagine not 1 year but 1,000. Not one person but a whole colony. Generations of humans born and raised on Mars, in a third of our gravity, bathed in radiation, in a world our bodies never evolved for. Give that a few centuries, and you don't just get people who live in space. You start getting people the environment is actively reshaping, the first humans pulled in a direction Earth could never pull them. We might not just spread to other worlds. We might, slowly, become slightly different kinds of human on each one. So let's finally answer it. What will humans evolve into in 1,000 years? Not the bug-eyed alien. Nature's too slow for that, and we now know it. If we somehow left it all to nature, you'd get a human a lot like you, a few less wisdom teeth, some tweaked immune genes, small quiet edits, nothing dramatic. But we're not leaving it to nature. That's the whole point. In 1,000 years, the humans who exist won't mostly be shaped by which mutations happened to survive. They'll be shaped by choices. By what we decided was a disease worth editing out. By which traits parents were allowed to select. By whether we drew a hard line at fixing and never crossed into upgrading, or whether we crossed it the way we cross every line, slowly, one reasonable-sounding step at a time. The future human isn't a creature evolution is going to hand us. It's a decision. 1,000 tiny decisions made by people, in labs and clinics and living rooms, about what a human being is allowed to be. For the first time, the answer to what will we become isn't up to the universe. It's up to us. And that's the thing I can't stop turning over. Every creature that has ever lived was written by something that couldn't think, 4 billion years of blind, patient nature, throwing mutations at the wall and keeping whatever survived. You are the end of that unbroken line. So is everyone you love. Every ancestor in your story was shaped, never consulted. Your descendants might be the first ones in the entire history of life to be asked, to be designed on purpose by hands that had a reason. And that is either the most hopeful sentence I've ever said on this channel, a species finally able to end genetic diseases, to protect its own children, to reach for worlds it was never built for, or it's the most frightening one. Because a species that can design itself has to answer a question no living thing has ever had to face. Not what can we become, but what should we? Nature had 4 billion years to figure us out, and never once had to make a choice. We've had this power for about 7 years, and the clock on those 1,000 years started the day Lulu and Nana were born. So, picture that future human one more time. Not the alien. A person maybe healthier than you, maybe braver, maybe built for a sky that isn't this one. And ask yourself the only question that actually matters now. Who do we want them to be?